the Apollo missions from the late 60s to the early 70s. So Apollo was our program designed to go to the moon. So what does it take to go to the moon? Well, there are various components to a moon mission, so we're going to look at each of these parts. First, of course, you need to launch. What we're looking at here is what's called the Saturn V, it's Roman numeral 5, rocket, and the Apollo capsule. Now, in this picture, Apollo capsule is that little thing right there. There is the command and service module, that's kind of their electrical system and things like that. All of this is the rocket. That's what's going to get you off the ground and ultimately get you headed to the moon. So it takes a whole lot of fuel to send a little something all the way to the moon. First thing you do is go into Earth orbit. Check out the systems, make sure everything's working properly. And then if everything's good, you're going to go for TLI. That stands for Trans-Lunar Injection. So that means leave Earth's orbit and go to the moon. So this is the last of that huge rocket being put to use. So this is that third stage of the rocket firing, and that's going to get us out of Earth orbit and get us headed all the way to the moon. After you leave Earth orbit, we need to get the Lunar Module. This is the part that lands on the moon. That was actually stowed in the third rocket stage. Because it's a very fragile spacecraft, they didn't want it exposed during launch. So this part, which is called the Command and Service Module, CSM for short, so this is the part where the people are, this little triangular bit. So that's the Command Module. This is the Service Module, and the two of them together are called the Command and Service Module. So that part had to turn around, dock with the Lunar Module, pull it out of that third stage of the rocket, and then this whole system is what goes to the moon. LOI, Lunar Orbit Insertion. NASA loves acronyms, and so you see a lot of these. So that means go into orbit around the moon. So you have to slow down. Use the engines on the service module to slow down and actually go into orbit around the moon. And this is the kind of view that the astronauts had of the surface of the moon. Then you had to land on the moon. So you have one astronaut who gets to stay in lunar orbit because you need somebody commanding the command module. And you have two astronauts who actually land on the moon. In the Lunar Module. So this is the Lunar Module. So, Neil Armstrong landing on the moon with Buzz Aldrin, they were in one of these things. So you've landed on the moon, do your moon stuff, collect rocks, set up experiment packages, The first moon landing, they were not out on the lunar surface very long, a few hours. Later missions, they were on the surface of the moon for up to 3 days, and so they were able to do a lot more. Then you need to leave the moon. It's only this top part that's going to take off. The bottom part of the lunar module now acts as your launch pad. The top part of the lunar module has just enough fuel to leave the surface of the moon. Going to reconnect with the command module. Once everything is transferred over into the command module, we're going to jettison the lunar module. They actually did intentional experiments where it crashed into the moon and set up seismic waves, and then they had equipment on the surface of the moon that measured the seismic waves. We're going to fire our service module and get out of moon's orbit and head back home. And then we're going to splash down. So here is the only part that comes back. That little capsule, that's the command module, is the only part of that entire huge stack that we saw originally that comes home. Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, all of those were ocean landings, splashdowns. We used the parachutes to slow things down, and then there was a inflatable part that comes out around the capsule to keep it afloat, and then an aircraft carrier would come and retrieve the crew and the capsule and take them to safety. So that is how we went to the moon and got back safely.